Our opening thought comes from Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Brothers Karamazov. Above all, don't lie to yourself. Persons who lie to themselves and listen to their own lies come to a point that they cannot distinguish the truth within them or around them, and so lose all respect for themselves and for others. And having no respect, they cease to love. Our next reading comes from Simone de Beauvoir, The Ethics of Ambiguity. Since we do not succeed in fleeing it, let us therefore try to look the truth in the face. Let us try to assume our fundamental ambiguity. It is in the knowledge of the genuine conditions of our life that we must draw our strength to live and our reason for acting. Our next reading comes from Paige Getty, Reflections on the Fourth Principle, which are found in the larger work edited by Ellen Brandenburg, The Seven Principles in Word and Worship. As responsible religious seekers, we recognize that we are privileged to be free, to have resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, to continually search for truth and meaning, to exist beyond bounds of dogma and oppression, and to wrestle freely with truth and meaning as they evolve. This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered, believing that our single perspective trumps all others, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers. And those mysteries may speak to us through our own intuition and experience, but also through tradition, community, conflict, nature, and relationships. As a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism makes sacred the right and responsibility to engage in this free and responsible quest as an act of religious devotion. Institutionally, we have left open the questions of what truth and meaning are, acknowledging that mindful people will, in every age, discover new insights. So today is the fourth in a series of 8 reflections on the 8 principles. We're looking at the fourth principle today, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's important to be open to truth wherever it may be found. But what is the truth? And how do we know what it is when we find it? Is the meaning of life something that is given to us? Or do each of us create our own meaning for ourselves? A free and responsible search for truth and meaning involves asking these difficult questions for ourselves and coming to our own conclusions, hopefully based on the best evidence and experience available to us. A beloved community does not prescribe a truth and meaning for us that we have to accept. A beloved community accepts us and supports us in our own free and responsible search for truth and meaning. When a community is involved in enforcement of religious doctrinal purity, sometimes referred to as doctrinal orthodoxy, this can easily become a form of mind control with the intent to manipulate persons into unity through the elimination of the diversity of thought. This is not conducive to fostering a beloved community of free and thoughtful persons. Religion ought to connect us, not control us, If religion is to have an overall positive influence on the cultivation of beloved community in our world, it will not be done through enforcing doctrinal orthodoxy, but through encouraging love and justice for all persons and all life. A beloved community is not about conformity of belief, but about everyone belonging in the community and being treated justly, no matter how they orient themselves to religion, even if they see themselves as not orienting themselves to religion at all. I personally experience it to be a gift that my family and many of my close friends orient themselves to religion differently than I do. I don't see that as being a failure or something to lament at all. I want them to find their own meaning for their lives and to explore their own understanding of that which is of ultimate concern to them. The freedom to search for truth, the freedom to create meaning for oneself while doing no harm to others is something I believe should be protected as a universal right of all persons, for those who are close to us and for those who are far. In her book, The Ethics of Ambiguity, we read a little bit of that a few moments ago, Simone de Beauvoir writes these words: "To will oneself free is also to will others free." Freedom, including the freedom to search for truth and meaning, comes with responsibility. A responsible search for the truth. Notice that the fourth principle doesn't just say a free search for truth and meaning. It says a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And a responsible search for truth and meaning, at minimum, entails doing no harm to others. And ideally, it would include doing positive good in relation to others. Doing no harm and doing positive good in relation to others includes willing them to be free, just as we will ourselves to be free. Just as we want others to respect our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, so too should we respect their free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This respect for the freedom of others calls us to be in solidarity with the oppressed. It calls us to be in solidarity with the oppressed, because when others are having their freedom limited, it is our responsibility to actively pursue their liberation. But the enforcement of doctrinal orthodoxy is a threat to this. It's a threat to the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It presumes that we as finite persons are able to know with certainty truths about the infinite and the ultimate, and that all others must conform to our doctrines to experience salvation. This is the opposite of the humility that is necessary for us to grow in our understanding of each other and of the cosmos in which we live, in which we move, in which we have our being. It leads to conformity and control rather than love, freedom, and justice in beloved community. Think about this. When we're in a community that is enforcing doctrinal purity or doctrinal orthodoxy, and we tell our children and others in our religious communities that they have to believe or behave in a certain way to be saved, aren't we telling them that being fully loved and fully accepted is conditional? Isn't that what we're saying? Even though this may not be our intention, that's the message, I think, that gets received. Religious experience in such a context of enforced doctrinal purity becomes tied to a fear of losing community, a fear of death, a fear of condemnation. It stifles free thinking, religious imagination, creativity, and also it stifles our ability to cultivate empathy for persons who think and believe differently than we do. This lack of empathy for others can easily devolve into both fear and hatred of the other. It often tends towards the oppression of persons with other religious views, sometimes violently so. It's not an accident that religious communities that enforce doctrinal purity, doctrinal orthodoxy, suppress a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And it's also not an accident that historically and currently, they have been the most resistant communities to the scientific method and to the growth in our understanding of each other and our understanding of the world that the scientific method provides. Religious communities that have promoted doctrinal orthodoxy resisted Copernicus, right? They resisted Galileo. They resisted Bruno. They killed Bruno. And Darwin. And today, with some exceptions, they are the most likely communities to reject many of the things that scientists are telling us today, including the issue of our climate crisis. When we encourage persons to pursue a free and responsible search for meaning and truth, it is not only good for them that we do so, it's also good for the well-being and the flourishing of our communities. When we're open to new knowledge and new ways of understanding, it enables us to experience the fruits of progress that can come from the freedom to pursue new knowledge and understanding of the world in which we live. I think if we are honest with ourselves, if we think carefully and clearly about why so many of us have the desire that others should share the same views that we do, that others should share the same views about truth and meaning that we have, I think we'll often find that this desire is motivated by our own insecurities rather than by a deep concern for the other. The more people who think and believe like we do, the more affirmed we feel. The more affirmed we feel that we are right. How could so many people be wrong? There's billions of us who believe this way. How could we be wrong? So we feel affirmed that we are right in our beliefs. And perhaps even more of a motivation for so many is a feeling of assurance that they feel in their own salvation. Affirmed in their belief that they are right, and a feeling of assurance in their own salvation. This desire for assurance of our own salvation is deeply rooted in one of the worst theological concepts ever created in the history of humanity, the idea of hell. That place, that experience of eternal and unremitting suffering and punishment, torment. The fear that this concept generates and the control and power that it gives religious and political authorities over our lives are the main drivers, I think, of the conformity of belief and practice in our religious communities. It's about fear. It's about fear. Hell is a friend to conformity. Hell is a friend to control. And it's an enemy of freedom and diversity. Unity based on conformity and the fear of hell is oppressive. It's oppressive to freedom, and it's oppressive to the human spirit. The good news, those of us in the United Methodist Christian tradition like to speak of good news. The good news is that hell is just a concept of our own making. And it need not continue to imprison us. It need not continue to oppress us. We are loved and accepted as we are, and we have nothing to fear from a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, even if it means we don't all think and believe the same. In beloved community, whatever form that might take, freedom and diversity are values to be embraced. They are values to be embraced, not suppressed. In beloved community, we do not all need to think alike to love and accept each other as persons. And this is why Unitarian Universalists support one another in the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. May we make it so. Our closing thought comes from Henry David Thoreau, from his work, Walden. It's his version of Gimme Some Truth. Thoreau writes, rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth.